Where'd you get these two guys from?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tackling Sport Podcast. It's Daniel here, joined once again by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
And Sean, we're going to mix it up this week by starting with the Premier League predictions. So delighted to welcome on the line first reigning champion Shane Sexton, Manchester United fan, and his neighbour and rival and the newest challenger on the podcast, Sean Gibney. Sean and Shane, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, lads?
Great to be back, lads. How are things?
So, Sean, introduce us and tell the listeners a little bit who you support, because we football fan McDara last week, which caused a bit of controversy from a lot of the listeners. They're like, who does he support? And we eventually stumbled upon Manchester United. You're a bit of United fan, but you've had a bit of a checkered history on different football clubs.
So at the start, I was a United fan for a couple of years. And then I got a bit bored of United. After Fergie left, they kept losing. So I decided to go to Tottenham then for a while. I'm not really a big Jose fan, so I'm off Tottenham again, and I'm back onto United. I also like Leeds as well. Leeds are a great team. I like Marcelo Bielsa, so they're my teams at the moment.
You had a stint at Liverpool as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but then Liverpool didn't have a great season either, so I'm off Liverpool as well.
And the Leeds thing came from the Glory Leeds doc on Amazon.
Yeah, great watch. I'd recommend anyone to watch it. The supporters are great. Marcelo's great. Leeds are going to be a top 4 team soon. Mark my words.
Sean, I'm surprised you haven't moved to Huddersfield, because Marco Bielsa's assistant coach is now the manager of Huddersfield.
Yeah.
And they scored a goal against Derby, playing out from the back, that got clipped on Twitter, and it's a thing of beauty. So I wouldn't be surprised to see you supporting the Terriers next.
Yeah, well, hopefully they get to the Premier League and they might get the support off me as well. Who knows?
So listen, we'll move on. So for those that haven't listened before, it's 3 points for a correct score and 1 point for a correct result, and you predict all 10 Premier League games. It was 5-1 last week, Shane. Comfortable enough in the end, although 1 or 2 scary moments.
Yeah, so it's got off to a good start with the Everton-Liverpool game being 2-2. McDara was unlucky in a few results. A couple of goals just didn't go his way. But yeah, it's nice to be back up against a bit of a wild can here in Sean. Don't know what he's going to predict. So we'll see how we get on anyway.
Absolutely. Sean really can't be accused of bias when half the teams are playing in the matches we're about to predict here. But we're moving on to one of the first teams for Sean. So we might as well go to you, Sean. Aston Villa at home to Leeds United, 2 really good teams. It's a Friday night game. Means basically there's been football on every day since the international breaks come back, which is brilliant. So talk us through this game you're thinking, and then what your prediction is.
Yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to this game. Two teams in form, two goal scoring teams. But I just think Leeds have the edge. Glory Leeds. I think Bamford's going to get 2, Grealish is going to get 1, and it's going to be 2-1 Leeds.
Oh, wow. Shane?
I see it a little bit differently. I think it's going to go, I think it'll be 2-2. Be a good game. A little bit disappointed with the Leeds performance against Wolves. They just couldn't really break them down. And Villa are absolutely flying at the moment. A great win against Leicester there last week. So yeah, I'm thinking 2-2, and should be a great way to start the weekend of football.
Yeah, I guess it's the first Friday game of the year, Sean, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you never know what they bring, these games, and Villa, like we didn't cover them on Monday's show, but Villa have been, the team of the year so far, 4 from 4, playing unbelievably good football. They probably had the best transfer window, if you think of getting Barkley, Watkins, Tyrone Mings and Grealish was signed extended contracts. So you think, and Emi Martinez and goals. So like they've incredible strength in that side now, and they've boasted their starting 11. And so many sides don't do that. They've got real quality, and it's going to be an interesting game for Leeds, because this is what I spoke about at the start of the year, whether I think they'd struggled in those kind of games where they have to. They have to be relentlessness. They've got a Monday game and now a Friday game, so a short turnaround. And if they can get a result away to Villa, it'll be big for them. But they're very disappointing on Monday night, and I just thought Wolves kind of controlled the game really. But it's going to be a really good game, I think, on Monday night.
Or Friday night, sorry. So lads, quick on Aston Villa before we get on to the next game. How far do you think they can go? Similar vibes to Leicester City in terms of they stayed up. Had a relegation fight the previous season, and then started really well the following season, and just kept the momentum and ended up winning the league. Can you see that at all for Villa? Can you see a top 4, top 6, or what's the height of their ambitions?
I see them doing well until Christmas, but then I don't know if they have the squad numbers to keep going for the full season. So I think a good top 6 finish would be a great result for Villa.
Similar enough. I think, they might get a good cup run, FA Cup or something like that. And, maybe top 6. I can't really see them pushing into the top 4. Could see them challenging for Europa League, all right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I'd say maybe 7 or 8. They mightn't have enough to finish in the top 6.
Yeah, I'd say I'd be the same. So we're like 7 and 8, but that'd be an unbelievable achievement from where Aston Villa being a bit of a yo-yo club in the last few years. They're such a big club and they kind of need to get back up to there. And it's such a fairy tale story as well with Dean Smith, the local man, an Aston Villa fan growing up managing them. So it's it's a brilliant story in that sense.
Absolutely. So listen, moving on to 12:30 game, West Ham at home to Manchester City. Few decent games this weekend. I'll go to you first, Shane, and then Sean, you can follow in with your prediction. Then, what are your thoughts on this game? Manchester City have been a bit inconsistent this season. Look at the face of it. Aside from that Leicester result, they've actually done quite well in terms of their results. But that Leicester performance is tough to kind of get out of your head, isn't it?
Yeah, the City, they just did enough there last week to beat Arsenal 1-0. They haven't really been amazing this season. And West Ham coming off a mad result, a 3-3 result against Spurs. You were thinking after the first half that Moisey boy should have just stayed at home, but he must have really kicked him up the arse there at half time. And I have been impressed with West Ham recently, but I do think City are just going to have a little bit too much quality. They had a decent result there last night in the Champions League. So I'm going to go for a City win. I think it'd be narrow enough. I'm going to go 2-1 City.
Similar kind of idea to Shane here. I think David Moyes has been great with West Ham, in fairness. They look like they'll get at least a top 10 this year, maybe. But yes, City just have the numbers. Aguero's coming back. I might bring him into fantasy football. Who knows? And I think City are going to win well this week. I think it's going to be 3-0 City.
It's going to be an interesting one for West Ham because, like you said, they're off the back of really good form and really good surprise victories. And if you had said a couple of weeks ago after the first couple of games of the season, you would have immediately said David Moyes is back in trouble again. But I think it's just he's probably found a formation, found a team, a Souček in midfield, and Declan Rice is a really good partnership. And I think they just kind of go back to sort of basic football. They try and defend in numbers. They got caught out in the first 15 minutes from Spurs. Was a bit of a blitz, but other than that, this year defensively they've been pretty solid. But you think of the quality of Manchester City, and they sort of clicked into gear against Porto in the second half, playing really fluid football. So it'll be a big challenge for David Moyes, but he's had big scalps during his managerial reign.
A City favourite for the league, lads?
Yeah, I think with the injuries that they probably are now, but it's very volatile. I think if Laporte or someone like that gets injured, I think maybe City are a bit more able to cope this year. But I think injuries is hampering Liverpool.
Yeah, I agree. I think since Virgil van Dijk's gone for Liverpool, I think they may as well just scratch the season off and start again next season. Yeah, City must be odds on to win the league now at this stage.
Yeah, hard to look past City. All right. Never know. United could come good.
GGMU.
We'll get on to United in a minute. This is nearly like MUFC TV. Fulham versus Palace, lads. How do you think that one's going? Can't really see a lot of goals in this myself. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe not too many goals, all right. But in fairness to Fulham, I thought their last two performances have been decent. Didn't get it out of the game against Wolves, probably should have, and definitely could have won against Sheffield United. They looked decent again last week in the second half. I thought Lookman played very well, and I'd actually fancy them to get something out of this game. In terms of Palace, they were pretty poor against Brighton. I think they'd one shot on target to Brighton's 20, and Palace's shot was a penalty. So like Palace just really struggling going forward. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win Fulham.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this game's not going to be that exciting. There's not going to be many goals at all. Palace are just bottom of the stats in everything, and to me, this is just a relegation game. I like Scott Parker. He's a fellow kind of Tottenham supporter at times, I'd say as well. So, I think this is going to be a 0-0 draw. I won't be paying too much attention to this game.
Yeah, I agree with Shane. I kind of fancy Fulham. You know, when Scott Parker came out so openly and vocally about how poor his defence has been, there's sort of been a switch since. You know, conceded a sloppy goal against Wolves, but there was serious numbers back there defending. And I fancied them. I thought Crystal Palace were woeful against Brighton. I thought it was a really dire performance. And probably not spoken about enough. I think they'd won shot in the whole game, one shot on target, and Brighton battered them really. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Fulham. They've had a bit of turn in form, got a good result away to Sheffield United, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them, like Shane said, beating Palace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's probably first derby between the sides in a while. But moving on to the game of the weekend, Manchester United home to Chelsea. Sean, we'll go to you first. This is a big game for your club. You've been a fan of United so far, or do you know some of their players? I know you're a fan of Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah, AWS. He's been in the news for probably the wrong reason the last few days. So I hope that doesn't distract him. He's a great player, great tackler, played great in the Champions League there against PSG the other night. He had a back pain in his bleeding pocket, so he did. But I think United are going to win this game. Chelsea just love leaking goals, like Zuma and Thiago Silva. Just they're not the greatest of pairing, in my opinion. And they might be later on in the season, but right now they like leaking goals. I think Rashford's on form. I think United are going to go on a bit of a run after this game. I think United win this game 2-0.
Wow, Shane.
I think United will win as well. Ollie seems to have Frank's number. I do think Chelsea will score goals, but it just comes down to Chelsea looking a bit shaky at the back. I know they got a 0-0 result against Seville in the Champions League, but I think United can just sort of set up the same way they played against PSG, invite Chelsea onto them and hit them sort of on the counter attack. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 win for United.
I think this one is a bit of a hard game to call. You don't know what you're going to get out of both sides. You know, Frank Lampard and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they're two managers that you wouldn't say necessarily are under a huge amount of pressure, but a couple of results either way, and you know, a lot of things can change. And you know, Manchester United, brilliant win against PSG. For all PSG probably weren't great, Manchester United were, you know, it was a different side to them, and it's a huge game for both sides. And I think the quality that you know, players like Bruno and Rashford has, and Bruno's one of those players I think that can have, you know, a really bad game for 70, 75 minutes and, you know, pop up with an assist or two or a goal and, you know, change the game. And those kind of players tend to do well in the Premier League. And, you know, won't be surprised to see Manchester United carry on a bit of good form.
Yeah, myself anyway, I definitely think Benjamin Mendy makes a massive difference to Chelsea, and he was back in the Champions League, and Keba there on Saturday against Southampton struggled. But where do you see just Edison Cavani, quick word on him? I'm not just asking this because he's in my fantasy draft and I really want to know, is he going to start at the weekend? But how do you see him fitting in United in the grand picture? Do you see him getting into United's best team? And then, I don't know, just thinking out loud here, you know, you've Rashford behind him, Bruno behind him, Pogba behind him, Greenwood behind him, you know, that's not Van de Beek behind him. So what's his best team? And do you think Cavani's in that best team?
Well, first of all, I hope Benjamin Mendy's not in goal for Chelsea.
Sorry,
Eduardo
Mendy. Eduardo Mendy, apologies. Yeah, Benjamin Mendy. You wouldn't be surprised if he ended up as a goalkeeper now. He's a bit mad.
Mendy's a good goalkeeper as well, who knows?
Well, I think about Cavani, look, I think, you know, he was probably bought as a, you know, almost as a panic buy, as a statement buy. I don't know if he necessarily gets in United's best side. Especially not I wouldn't expect him to start against Chelsea, but he's you know, a serious player to have at 33 years of age. Now, being around a few clubs, has that experience. But no, I don't think he'll necessarily start in the next few weeks. I think Rashford is really doing well down the middle at number 9, and I think that's probably his best position. And I think, you know, even himself will agree that that's where he can score huge amounts of goals. And whether Cavani has the legs to be doing what Rashford does, I'm not too sure.
Sort of agree with Sean there, but he could definitely feature on the weekend. You know, Greenwood does have a knock and Martial is suspended, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe get sort of 10, 15 minutes. I think when sort of if Martial, if he plays to the same form that he did last year, and then with Rashford and Greenwood off him, like I can't really see Cavani getting in the team. But like if we're chasing a goal, it's a great player to put on. You know, he's a real presence in the box. But as our first team goes, our strongest team, I wouldn't see him being involved. But I think it's a good option to have off the bench but it's definitely wasn't the plan to sign him in the summer. They could have signed him, months ago, but they obviously just were feeling the heat from the fans, and they just sort of panicked and got him. But hopefully, it'll work out. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I just think he's a super sub really. He's replacing Igalo, and I think he'll get a few goals. But I just hope he's not like a Falcao and he just doesn't do anything while he's at United.
Yeah, definitely a Falcao vibe, but you never know. I do genuinely think they might have just stumbled upon a really good number 9 and lads can play off him, but we'll see how that goes over the course of the season. Moving on to the champions at home to Sheffield United at 8 o'clock. It's one of the pay-per-view matches, which we probably have to get a podcast on eventually, Sean, to talk about the merits of pay-per-view. But lads, how do you see this going? We'll go to you first, Shane. Liverpool home to Sheffield United at 8 o'clock Saturday.
I think Sheffield United, I'd be very worried about them, especially the fact they only drew against Fulham. They're playing Liverpool. They play City next week. They've only 1 point from 5 games. And yeah, you'd have to be a bit concerned. Obviously, Liverpool have their injury worries, but I think the Alisson injury isn't as bad as first thought. I don't know if I doubt he'd be fit for the weekend, but even still, I imagine that Liverpool should have just too much quality against Sheffield. So I'm going for a 3-1 win to Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm very similar to Shane here. I don't think Sheffield United will score a goal, to be honest. That sharp guy up front he's not very good. And I just think the 3 lads up front got taken off early in the Champions League. So he's clearly saving them for the Premier League games to come. So that's obviously Mane, Salah, and Firmino. And Firmino just looked on fire in the Champions League. His touch was great. So I think Liverpool are going to score a good few goals here, and it's going to be 3-0 Liverpool.
Liverpool, of course, one of Sean's former clubs. One Sean to another Sean. Sean Gibney there slagging off Billy Sharp, who I know you're a massive fan of. What are your thoughts on that? You're shaking your head here, but there's a rant coming.
No, I'm not having that. No, Billy Sharp's a football league legend. He's just someone like you've grown up watching play at Doncaster, Leeds, Sheffield United. He's such a goal scorer. I'm not having that. No, I'm sorry. And he scored goals in the Premier League. Look, he probably came a little bit too late. But and
you can give him that at least. Like
you put him in that bracket of the likes of Adam Lafondra, Cameron Jerome, lads that are just unbelievable football league goal scorers. But look, I do worry for Sheffield United as well. I thought they'd and I'd say they're one of the clubs who are really, really struggling without the intensity of fans at Bramall Lane, and that was such a fortress last year, and it's such a tough place to go. And I think really, Chris Wilder, maybe as well is struggling with that intensity because they're such an intense side and so, pragmatic about what they do, and they're just, sloppy little mistakes here and there. Even the goal they concede, it's a little bit of skill by Lookman, but the ball kind of ricochets, and it's just not Sheffield United. Missing Jack O'Connell, who's a huge loss for them. I think that's such a big injury because a club like that doesn't have a huge amount of strength. But no, I would worry for Sheffield United. I think they're in a real bind at the moment. They've difficult fixtures coming up, but hopefully Billy Sharp can save them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get to save them in the Championship, maybe, but Premier League's a different level, Sean.
Sean got the fighting. Sean, that's 1-0 to Sean, United fan Sean there. But listen, we'll move on to the team top of the league away to Southampton Everton. It's a 2 o'clock game on Sunday, lads. How do you see this game going? I'll go to you first, Gib.
Yeah, so I think Ancelotti has just been doing bits with Everton. Basically, he's just got the best out of all the lads. Calvin Lewin's just keeps scoring goals. He scored his debut goal for England there as well last week. So yeah, I think Everton are just with James Rodriguez and Calvin Lewin and Richarlison, they're just they could honestly win the league. So I think it's going to be 2-0 Everton.
Wow, Shane.
I think there's goals in both teams. Southampton got a really good result against Chelsea to fight back for a 3-3 draw. And Everton seem to be in high scoring, very entertaining games. Everton are, they're really good to watch. Rodriguez, he's obviously pulling the strings for the likes of Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison. I think there's going to be goals in this game, so I'm going for a 4-2 win to Everton.
Goals, goals, goals. Normally you'd be like, that's a ridiculous prediction, but this season, to be honest with you, you're probably on the right kind of track. Carlson, a bit of a loss, Sean. After that red card tackle, he'll be out. How do you see this game going yourself?
Southampton, big time. I thought they were really good against Chelsea. You know, Chelsea would just had that little bit of attacking quality. And it's sort of the game where Everton have stumbled a lot in recent years, you know, and just are lacking a little bit. You know, I think Coleman will probably be missing as well. And John Joe Kenny will probably come in a right back. And I think maybe that leadership and that bit of intensity on the pitch is gone. And I really fancy Southampton. I'd say Southampton to win, both teams to score would be mine.
Wow, very interesting. So moving on, the 4 games left. Sorry, Wolves, Newcastle, Sunday is the 4:30 kickoff. We're going to go to you first, Shane. How do you see this game going? Wolves in a bit of form there, massive result for them Monday night.
Great result against Leeds. They sort of scrapped it out, and they sort of scored a bit of a smelly goal. Jimenez a deflection, but a win's a win, and great to beat Leeds and then to go on and play a team like Newcastle, who were poor against United. I know it was 1-1 for the majority of the game, but they just seemed to crumble in the last 10-15 minutes. I don't think Newcastle are a great team. They'll probably stay up, but they're not going to light up the Premier League. So I think Wolves will kick on again, and I fancy Wolves to win 2-0 here.
I think this game's going to be a close one. It all depends on if Traore plays or not. If Traore doesn't play, he's in my fancy draft. I don't see why he's not playing, to be honest. He gives all the service into Jimenez up front. And yeah, Newcastle are just not the most exciting team to watch. They don't get that many goals. Wilson, he was good at the start of the season, but haven't seen many goals from him since. So I think it won't be the most exciting game in the world. Wolves will control all the possession, and I think it's going to be a 1-0 win to Wolves.
Yeah, look, I think Wolves have sort of, at the start of the season, they got battered by West Ham. I think they're taking a more pragmatic approach now. I think they've gone a bit more defensively sound at the back. Connor Cody was really good. Max Gilman as well, the young guy. And I think they're just going to really grind out results at the moment because they're not playing as free-flowing as they'd like. But it is a big game for them. And, I think if we can win this, then they're off the back of a couple of really good results. But Newcastle are they're taking points at Tottenham. They look like they got a bit more of a goal threat this year with Callum Wilson. But, you would fancy Wolves to keep a clean sheet because they're being so good defensively at the moment.
Give a quick word on Sean there. He's a massive Callum Wilson fan and Steve Bruce fan, and he was a bit kind of upset there at some of your comments on Newcastle.
Oh, was he? I didn't realise Sean was a fan of all these amateur no. I don't say amateur strikers, but I wouldn't say top class strikers, Sean. But it's nice to support the underdog, I suppose. I'm sorry what I said about Wilson, but I don't even think he gets 10 goals this season.
Look, he started the season pretty well. I have him in my fantasy team. I hope he keeps scoring them for Newcastle. And I've been really impressed with Steve Bruce. Look, it's probably not the most exciting, exhilarating football, but under Rafa Benitez, it wasn't either, and everyone treats Rafa as a god up there. So I think Newcastle have done okay. They're still going to be thereabouts for a relegation battle, but I think they have a bit more quality this year with Wilson, Fraser, St. Maximin looks a really good player and someone that can get them out of a bind in games. And I think Steve Bruce is doing a decent job at the moment. And look, they might necessarily be everyone's cup of tea to watch. I still
not Gibbs anyway.
Yeah, you've got players like John Joe Shelby, who's just like you'd pay money to just watch him sometimes in midfield, spray passes around, and I'll still watch this game. I think it'll be a decent game. I'm not sure if I'll pay. Do you have to pay for this one? Yeah.
No, you don't. Believe it or not, bonus territory. But you actually have to pay to the next game, which is Arsenal Leicester at 7:15. And there's people have kind of been saying, would this game not have been on TV if it wasn't for pay-per-view? I doubt it myself, to be honest with you. I think this is a bit of a kind of, we'll sneak this one in, get a few Arsenal fans paying for it. So, lads, how do you see this going? We'll start with you, Gib. Arsenal at home to Leicester City.
Yeah, I think Leicester have been poor this season. Well, so far anyway, I think. And I think Arteta is just getting the Arsenal lads going. I know you're a big fan of Arsenal, Dan, so I wouldn't want to go against the main man here with Arsenal. I think Aubameyang's going to start scoring goals again, and he's going to go on a bit of a run. And I also have him in fantasy football, so I really need a few goals this week. So I think Arsenal are going to win by 2 or 3 here. So I'm going to go Arsenal 3-1.
Yeah, I would say Arsenal. I thought they're a bit disappointing against City. But then again, Leicester lost their last 2 games, both at home, which is very worrying. I think Arsenal, they look solid enough at the back. I presume Partey will come in and really make his presence felt in midfield. I can just see Arsenal sort of grinding out a result. It seems to be something that Arteta has instilled into the Arsenal team, just to win. It doesn't have to be amazing football, just get the 3 points, which Arsenal have been missing for years under Wenger and Emery. So I think Arsenal are just going to win by 1 goal. So I'm going to go 1-0 Arsenal.
Yeah, Sean, I suppose the main thing with Arsenal, and to touch on what Shane said there, is Arteta's not playing Pep Guardiola template football. He's playing pragmatic football, and he's almost kind of building the team from the defence back, which is what's something Arsenal fans have been crying out for years, but it's not the way Arsenal fans expected Arteta to come in. How do you think he's done so far? And in this game, this is probably one of those games where, if Arsenal do want top 4, they do really have to win, particularly because Leicester City will probably be up there, although maybe the Europa League might stop that challenge for them.
Arteta has done, a very good job in that sense, and he's taken some big scalps. And look, I think at the moment that their side is probably limited in quality, and a lot relies on Aubameyang up that left wing. But it's going to be an interesting game because Jamie Vardy missed the Villa game. Rodgers is hopeful he'll be fit, and if Jamie Vardy starts against Arsenal, his record is unbelievable since that ever since that transfer didn't go through about 4 or 5 years ago. So he obviously has something in the back of his mind. He's got real, a goal threat against Arsenal. And if he starts, you would fear for that Arsenal back 4 and, the counter attack that was so good against Manchester City for Leicester. And it's just a different ball game with Jamie Vardy starts. It's a complete different threat. I thought they were, lacking a huge amount against Aston Villa. They're lacking a Jamie Vardy to sort of make something happen from nothing. He's one of those players. And you'd be worried for Arsenal's back 4 if Vardy and Barnes and Perez are running at them and causing them huge problems. And and I don't think they have the attacking ability to get them out of trouble, maybe like they used to, maybe under Wenger, and they don't have that ability to just win 3-2 or 4-3, one of those sort of performances. And I think Arsenal have to be a lot more pragmatic.
Yeah, absolutely. Gave a common theme. We're moving on to Brighton West Brom. It's the 5:30 game on Monday. A common theme in this show so far is everyone's biased towards their fantasy players and kind of bring their opinions based on that. Have you any Brighton or West Brom players in either draft or fantasy out of interest? And how do you see this game going?
Brighton or West Brom?
Who are West Brom? I have Mopey in my main fantasy, and he's been getting the odd goal here or there. So I think he's going to get another one tomorrow with a Sonny March assist, and I think Sonny gets a goal as well, to be honest with you. West Brom, I like the manager, but like they're getting relegated in my opinion as well. They don't have the goal scorers, and they leak goals in the defence. So yeah, I think Brighton win 1-0 here.
I really like Brighton. Absolutely dominated against Palace, played great football. And I think they'll score a few against West Brom. I was disappointed with West Brom last week. I thought, it was a great opportunity to get their first 3 points on the board against a poor Burnley team, but to not even put one past them is, very disappointing. So I think Brighton here, I'm going to go with a 3-0 win for Brighton, and we'll go for a Mopey hat-trick.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's one of those games that I think a few people might struggle to pay $14.95 for. But it's still an important game for both sides. Brighton have one of those sides that fall into that category of play, decent football, but don't necessarily get the results. I remember it was Roberto Martinez when he was at Everton saying, well, we play really good football and we're the better side nearly every game, but he got sacked because he couldn't get those games. And I think, it's a false sense of security for some managers to be in. Like Shane said, Brighton battered Palace for the majority of the game. Lewis Dunk got sent off. He's a huge loss for them. They sort of play Ben White in central midfield at times. So whether he slots back in at centre half, you presume. But, West Brom have that quality going forward, and they can score goals, with the likes of Pereira and Diagana. I fancy Brighton at home, absolutely.
Yeah, so moving on to the Monday night football game, lads. We're there. Burnley versus Spurs. Shane, go to you first before we go to Gibbs' beloved Tottenham. How do you see this game going? Like, you kind of get teams of polar opposites 8 minutes before the end of Spurs West Ham game. But that West Ham, those 3 goals, I reckon Spurs will almost come out even stronger off the back of that. And then there's literally zero complacency. And Jose, what was his? Actually, move on to you here, give for a second. Whichever one of you lads showed me the Instagram of Jose's Instagram with the 3 footballs. Is it for the 3 Europa Leagues or the 3 goals we conceded against West Ham?
He put up 3 Europa League balls, the 3 goals against Spurs, or the 3 goals we conceded against West Ham, or the 2 Europa Leagues and one and a third one on the way or something. Classic joke. He's a great character. I think Spurs should just have far too much for Burnley here. It's just a matter of how many goals are Spurs going to score. I'd like to see if they go with Kane, Son, and Bale. Bale, he almost got his goal and would have wrapped up the game. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great return for him the way the game finished. But with the form that Kane and Son are in, with Kane sort of just dropping in a little bit and Son running in behind, and Kane's passing has just been amazing this season. So I think this could get painful for Burnley. So I'm going to go for a 4-0 win to the Spurs.
Yeah, I'm along the same lines as Shane here. I was going to go 4-0, but I'm going to change mine now. And I'm going to go 5-0, and I'll tell you why now. I think Sonaldo and Kane are just absolute ballers. Kane just gets to do what he wants. He defends. He can play centre mid. He can be a striker. He's class. And with having Bale there on the right and Son on the left, Burnley are just going to leak goals, unfortunately. But the only thing is the Tottenham centre backs are poor. They're poor, but Burnley just don't have, like, Chris Wood's not going to score many goals against Tottenham, in fairness. So yeah, Shane goes 4-0, but it's definitely going to be 5-0.
I was going to ask you that because it's an interesting comparison to make, because both being Manchester United fans and both having seen Wayne Rooney in the flesh a lot of times. Wayne Rooney sort of at the end of his career has dropped deeper, if you like, and now, at times does play number 9 for Derby, at times sort of plays as a number 10, drops a little bit deeper and has played central midfield for them. Is that something that Kane has sort of slowly shown that he can play, he can play number 10 if he wants, or do you still think at the moment it sort of suits him with having, pace of, Son or Bergwijn or Bale? Do you think that sort of role is suiting him at the moment and he couldn't go any deeper?
Yeah, I guess it is suiting him. I think he still has the pace to play the 9 role and in behind the defenders, but his long passing is just it's so good, and he can put Bale in, or he can put Son in from putting the ball over the defenders' heads pretty easily. So I think Jose might be just testing something out and seeing how Kane gets on in that kind of deeper role. But yeah, in later years, you could probably see Kane do a similar role,
Yeah, and I think, he after Bale's little cameo in the miss, I think he'll start against Burnley, because I thought, Bergwijn wasn't great. And Burnley are in a huge amount of trouble, and it's sort of a game where they have tend to got something at home, defensively, and maybe they're missing the crowd as well, because Turf Moor is a really difficult place to go, and teams are just, wiping the floor with them and the transfer window they've had. But, I have Son and Kane in my fancy team. I'm going to captain one of them, but I would not be surprised to see Burnley put up some sort of resilience, because they have to, because it's, that it's starting to go away from them, and they haven't the squad to compete with other teams around them. So, I think Tottenham will win well, but hopefully Burnley can show something, and maybe, just maybe, defend well and nick a goal on the break with Chris Wood or Ashley Barnes.
Yeah, I guess we really need to put all our fantasy teams up for disclosure, so lads know where the bias is coming from, and then people can make their own calls. But listen, that's it, lads. Really appreciate your time. We're going to tag the 2 years on Instagram and give this a real build up this weekend, because it's literally nearly half a week between 8 o'clock Friday and then 8 o'clock Monday. So It's a real spread of games. Every game is going to be live on TV in some form, whether pay-per-view or not. So we'll keep it up to date, lads. And listen, can Shane do he's 2 in a row so far. Shane, you're going for the first, where you've already done the first 2 in a row, to do the 3 in a row. So listen, lads, best of luck to Shane and Gib. And thanks for coming on, lads.
Looking forward to being back. All the best, lads.
See you next week.
My mind's gone running.
And welcome back to the Tackling Sport podcast. Sean, before we move on to GA, you want to have a quick word on the Dundalk for any Thursday listeners that are listening to this before their game. What a massive opportunity for Dundalk, and it kind of hits home when they're in the same group as Arsenal, kicking off at the same time, and obviously that game to come as well. But do you think they've have a chance of qualifying?
Yeah, it's one of them, and I said a few weeks ago that, in a way, they're very lucky they've Arsenal, who, more than likely will take 18 points on their 6 games, which always helps, because it just means Dundalk have to look after, the other couple of sides. And it is, like you said, it's a real opportunity. Arsenal playing away to Rapid Vienna. So you've got them 2 in your group. Dundalk, of course, playing Molde, who most people know from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's time with Molde, the Norwegian champion. So look, it's a real big opportunity. And, we've said it before, it's a real break for them, because after the Champions League loss and the way it happened, and Vinnie Perk being, sort of let go or sacked, if you like, John Gill then stepping away, the pro license holder, it's sort of been a bit of a, in to and fro for the last few weeks, but they've sort of discovered something, that little bit of form. And, the majority of those Dundalk lads know what it's like to compete in Europe. So that sense of, being novices is maybe lost in them a little bit. The likes of Gary Rogers, Brian Gartland, Chris Shields, lads who've been there for a few years and would have experienced it under Stephen Kenny. So it is a real opportunity for them, and a real chance. And every result matters, every goal matters, in terms of not only qualification but in terms of prize funds. And that stat that you could win the Electricity League for I think 7 or 8 seasons, and a win in Europe gives you the same prize money. So it's a major opportunity for Dundalk. And you wish them well, and they have, like they said, they have players who know what it's like to win. They're going to be underdogs in most of these games, and Molde aren't going to know a lot about Dundalk, but hopefully by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock tonight, they'll know a lot more about them.
Absolutely. Game kicks off at 5:55 Irish time. So listen, we wish Dundalk the very best of luck. Moving on to GAA, a lot to get through here, Sean, in terms of, Roscommon, Offaly, Waterford have all fallen with COVID. As far as we know, Roscommon were using a bus to the game. Like, are all county teams using a bus? Shouldn't they all be driving?
Well, it's that super bus Roscommon have. It's that the yellow and blue one. I forget the name, but they spent it. Say, I think, was it €200,000 on that? That it's the famous Roscommon bus. Anyway, but I think it shows you some of the precautions that some sides are taking that others aren't. Is that problem falling down from Croke Park? And I think it's just, there's so many grey areas with COVID at the moment, and so many things that are happening that shouldn't happen really. And players are being positive. Offaly are testing their panel, so if anything comes out of that today or tomorrow, we could see them falling. And the problem with the coronavirus at the moment is it's in every county, and maybe it wasn't in the summer when it was sort of 85% in Kildare or whatever it was. And I think that's sort of a problem at the moment. And for county boards, the more you go testing, the more you're going to find it, and the more incidents you're going to get of it. So it's just it's a real problem at the moment, and there seems to be no light being shed by the GAA. They came out with some of the stuff about Nefford, and then we're saying that the under-20 and minor can't go ahead, which is a huge issue at the moment, considering that Galway and Dublin we're supposed to line out in the under-20 football final. So when you see and hear things like that, it would slightly disappoint you, the fact that they could play last Sunday, they can't play this Sunday. I know the Leinster under-20 Hurling Championship, but we're going at Dublin played away to Antrim, but it is it's a little bit funny in that regard and everything that's happened. But you would be conscious the whole time of COVID and the dangers of it. And I think a lot of counties' sides and county boards are really under pressure at the moment. And fair play to Leitrim being the first county to sort of step up or step out really and come out, with their stance on it. I know Ryan McMenamin has been very vocal on Fermanagh and talking about smaller counties getting less of a treatment, which, to a degree I would agree with, because every person that plays in the county GA is at a risk and they should be treated the same way, whether they're from, Dublin, Cork, Kilkenny, or whether they're from Fermanagh, Leitrim or Sligo. And I think, maybe the GAA, they don't have the funds to be testing, but they've opted for the championship to go ahead at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like I think Offaly, for example, their hurling squad's gone because of a training session, which means were they indoors? Like what's going on there? But like you said, Sean, in retrospect and in hindsight, it looks like maybe we should just cracked on with the championships and not had the league's last two games. And maybe just made the hard decision to postpone it, because those teams going up and down the country, if it's a case of Longford going to Offaly, it's a little bit different to, Longford going to Cork or Kerry going to Donegal for a game. Do you know what I mean? I know they weren't the games, but they're just they are the games actually this weekend, isn't it, Donegal Kerry? But it just seems a bit of a mess. And with walkovers coming in the league, it makes a bit of a mockery to the league where, Down can get promoted with a couple of walkovers. It's like Division 8 or 9 in Dublin kind of stuff. The last couple of games where walkovers end up deciding promotions.
Yeah, well, I think we'll see something with the GA come out with something in the coming weeks about that, because the integrity of the competition, like I said, is a problem there. And I think one of the things I saw was it might have been a Longford player, but because Longford were due to go up to the north to the 6 counties and play, his employer was worried and treating it as going to another country, and he had to quarantine, so he had to make that decision. And that's the problem. A lot of decisions are going to have to be made by footballers and hurlers, men and female, as to whether it is worth the risk of playing for your county. And at the end of the day, the GA has always been about it should be fun, safe, easy to represent your county, and that has sort of been eroded over the years in terms of training times and workloads and commitments. And I think now some of that has been put into issue. Like there's been a lot of players who've come out vocally and said GA, it should go ahead. The likes of Limerick hurlers and men's hurlers have been very vocal about it. Cian Lynch, John Kiley down there. Limerick as a county has done pretty well in terms of COVID cases for its size, especially throughout the summer when their club championship was flying. There was very few cases there, and look, at the end of the day, it's not easy decisions to make. But you would be a little bit, I think that the thing about the underage is probably a little bit, odd how they allowed them to start. And like, Dublin Galway are supposed to be playing this Sunday, I think, or this Saturday, and it'd be an unbelievable festival, for those lads to play in an under 20, who some of those guys won't get the opportunity to represent Dublin at senior level or Galway at senior level, and it's just the way it is. And those guys who committed so much time at minor and sort of been taken from them, and the game would have been on TG Car, everyone in the country could have watched it. And I think it's just a little bit disappointed with how everything has fallen. And I think there's been a lot of own goals by the GA and in their communication with NEFID. And I think it's just, I think it's sort of boiling, and it's going to come to a head in a few weeks when it gets serious and something happens as a cause of lack of or maybe negligence at someone's part. And like you said, people training indoors or getting a bus and just these small little things, I think they can add up.
Yeah, and final point on that, I heard Oisin McConville make the comparison that the PFA, when the Premier League games were about to go back, or when they were just going back, the PFA actually met with every single professional footballer individually, making sure they were okay about COVID. And then, what the GPA decided to do 2 days before Championship started was send out a survey. Like that should have been done a couple of weeks ago, and they should have been done in-house, and they should have made those agreements and talked to the GA, you know what I mean? And it's frustrating kind of how that's all played out, to be honest with you. And we're left with a case where a lot of players are uncomfortable, and it's easy for someone to say, oh, well, then listen, they don't have to play. Nobody's forcing them to play inter-county. But, I've only played on a club team, and I know how big games are, and I'd struggle to, if I had reservations, to pull out of a club. So I can only imagine the pressure on an inter-county player. And I'm not talking about there's nobody saying anything and telling him to do it, but the pressure himself will feel. It's like everything, you always think it's a bigger issue than, in terms of if you pulled out, it would be such a big issue where it probably wouldn't be. I'm not saying there's that atmosphere in counties. I'm just saying that, realistically, no one's going to pull out if especially a starting player is going to pull out.
Yeah, and I think if you're, someone, that represents a small parish, the likes of Renard and Kerry, say if it was Killian Young 5 or 6 years ago, and you're under pressure because, you're such a small club, and you are this one sort of shining hope, and you're linked to the county side, or, if you're someone from Ballyjames, Duff and Cavan, where the incident rate is so high, then you start coming under pressure, and it's not just a decision you're making, it's sort of a decision you're making. It's sort of a decision you're making for your community. Is it safe to go out if you're from a small rural isolated area, or are they pushing you out the door to represent your county? So, you know, I agree with you. I think it's easy, and some players have come out and being a bit like, well, if you don't want to play, don't play. But I think it's not as easy as that. It's not. There's no yes or no. There's no right or wrong answer to this. And I think, like you said, there should have been a lot more talk and a lot more mediation done to try and broker deals, because maybe, to be honest, maybe the GA were just blindsided, and maybe they didn't expect the cases to be as high, or for us to be in level 5. But you think an organisation like that would have different plans in place to deal with different things, and at the moment it just seems like we've gone backwards on the issue. And
Yeah.
it's worrying times, because if something happens, the lasting impact of anything happen, you think of players that struggling within themselves and maybe have issues or fatigue around injuries or mental health problems because of the pressure that's coming. And that's what it is. It's not every summer you think of players playing, and it's a privilege to go to train, and on a Tuesday, Thursday, when it's 8 o'clock and you're meeting up with players from all around the county, and you've that bond where now you're going into a secure, well, almost secure bubble. You're going in, and it's not as easy, and it's not as nice a scenario, and managers are a little bit more tense, and it's those colder nights. So the pressure is on players, and it's I think the GPA, and I just hope there's no lasting legacies from that, whether whatever it be, God forbid anything is to happen or injuries are to happen. And I just hope everything goes smoothly and does lift the country like a lot of people say it will.
Yeah, I know, and we can't decide the fact it will. Like, I just looking at the fixtures here in front of me, it's some great games. I suppose the disappointing thing, because it's the final league games, I've tried to put it in a way the matches are on at the same time, so you won't have that too on Saturdays. 4 games in a row, but there's still some cracking games. There's Kerry Donegal in Division 1, and then on Saturday 2 o'clock, and then Sunday 2 o'clock is Mayo Tyrone, Galway, Dublin, Monaghan, Meath. That's just Division 1. How do you see some of these games going? It's a little bit. We talked about Mayo first again, and their huge performance against Galway. I think it was 2-17 in the first half. Was unheard of. How do you see some of these teams are set up for this weekend and Division 1 ties, and then ultimately moving into a knockout championship?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what Donegal are going to do going out to Kerry when they've got Tyrone, whether they want more competitive minutes, whether they want their players to be rested more, take it as it comes on a player-by-player basis, I'd imagine. And look, there is some really good games. Dublin-Galway should be a good game, but with Galway's injuries, you'd probably worry for Galway, and if Dublin were to batter them as well, you'd really worry maybe for Galway's mental state. Like I said, it is just great back to be able to sit here and talk about the GA's return, hopefully a safe return. But like I said, there is some really good games. The Leinster Championship is starting. Dublin are playing Laois in the hurling, like we spoke with Sean Tracy. That's a huge game for the Dublin hurlers. And all of a sudden, if you lose that game, you're out and you're done. And it's as simple as that. And for those guys in the Dublin hurling rank, trying to get revenge for Laois's win last year, Eddie Brennan with Laois, who has been vocal himself about COVID and the safe return. Like he's under, a lot of these people are under obligations to go back and train Laois, to go and be involved, because it's what they've signed up for. If they don't, then they might lose their job, or they might lose their role within it, or whatever it is. And it is. And look, it naturally would be a really good game and two really good hurling sides. And like I said, it's just great to see it back and have talking points at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So yeah, the knockout championship, I guess, and going forward, it'll be interesting how these games go. Like in hurling, for example, what's worked really well, Munster and Leinster, is the group stages and what they've done there, where now it's knockout all the way through. Is there ways of the GA, for example, in the football where they see knockout working well? That it's a throwback to the 90s. It's amazing that till 2001 this was the way it was, and just knockout football, knockout hurling. Well, knockout hurling to 96, I think. Should the GA go down that route for their championships in terms of knockout? Should they be changing the format for next year? Football, for example, there's Tier 2 coming in next year. People have kind of forgotten about that with all the COVID stuff. Well, that's coming in no matter what. There's no way we can change it until 2022. Any thoughts, really? I know we touched on this with Stephen before about, championship restructures. Is there a chance of GA in these times to see what works in terms of knockout? Knockout works in the sense for club championships where there's only one game. Which means and if they get knocked out, counties can plan their club championships. But then the other hand, obviously, one game that shouldn't define a whole summer.
No, I don't think knockout games solve the issue that is inter-county GA and the commitment and the dedication that's needed. And I don't think it solves that. And I don't, just because you might play one game of the year, but you're still going to train for 3 or 4 months in the lead up, you're going to have your National League campaign more than likely. So I don't think it solves the issue, and the issue is the length of the season, I think, is the big issue. And I don't necessarily think it shortens it anymore, because, you know, teams are still, you can imagine that Kerry, Mayo or Dublin in the football going for an extra 2 months after a Longford or an Antrim have been knocked out, and it's just the way it is. And I think the big problem is the length of the season. But no, like you said, look, knockout football, it's not going to suit every team. It's gonna, it just means teams are going to have to turn up and perform. And, you know, it might mean for better games. Who knows? It might mean for more stalemate games. You know, Tyrone and Donegal is going to tell us a lot, I think, in a couple of weeks, whether teams go out and attack it because there's nothing to lose, if you like, or whether teams are more defensive and try and slow the game down. And it's just kind of time will tell on that sense. But no, it's a real opportunity for counties like Kerry, who necessarily only have to beat one side in their province to get into the final stages, whereas, you know, Donegal or Tyrone have to be Division 1 teams and Division 2 teams, whereas Kerry are the only Division 1 team in their province. And it's the same almost what you like with Dublin, where, well, although Meath are there and there's a couple of Division 2 sides, it's not as hard for you know, for Connacht or Ulster. But you know, I sort of, you know, in this age of knockout football, I think it does bring a sense of excitement, something different. And I think with the way Kerry are flying at the moment, and you know, Mayo as well, I think it's shaping up to be an exciting, you know, exciting few weeks, because you expect Dublin to come strong in a few weeks, and before you know it, that could be your 3, and you're waiting on a team from Ulster.
Absolutely. So finishing up in the league on this weekend, so Kerry top of the league by a point against Dublin Galway. So if they beat Donegal there, they win the league. No final this year, of course. If Kerry lose, it's Galway Dublin knockout for the league final. It's great seeing that Division 1 closeness. Just for people that aren't aware, so Roscommon be on top in Division 2, Armagh, Westmeath tied 2 points behind. Cork and Down are going to come from Division 3 into Division 2 promotion, and then in Division 4, it's take your pick from Wicklow, Wexford, Limerick, and even Antrim are still in there. And I suppose automatically Sligo and Carlow as well. So a lot to play for in that regard. How do you see just Division 1? Quick word on them. You know, Kerry should get the job done against Donegal.
Yeah, but like I said, it all depends on what Donegal turn up, and if they give Kerry a good game or not, because of the Tyrone game in a few weeks. But Kerry have probably been the team of the league, maybe with Galway. Dublin struggled in the early part back in February, March. Seems bizarre to say that. But I think Kerry are sort of shaping up for a real crack at it. I think there's a real sense, you get the feeling from Peter Keane and from within the Kerry camp that they really fancy a chance at knocking Dublin off their perch, if you like. Or same with Mayo, James Horn. Even I think James Horn's maybe a little bit more candid and a bit more slow to come to terms with that maybe, but Peter Keane is really riled up, and you think, you know, you see Pat Spillane and people in the media, and you think Kerry are really setting up for a real shot at Dublin. And you know, who knows, if they win the league, it gives them that little bit of confidence, and it just kicks on, because you know, they lost the league final a couple of years ago to Mayo, and they haven't necessarily won a lot as a team, so maybe it might give them something going into the next few weeks.
Yeah, and the thing with Kerry, they were primed after, you know, there's no bigger motivation for them after Dublin winning the 5 in a row after those 2 classic games. So look, we can't wait for that sort of thing those games to take place in the championship, and hopefully there is a rematch of Kerry and Dublin down the line. But quick word on Six Nations, the Ireland-Italy game is the only game on this week, just to that's the game in hand for people who I'd nearly forgotten during March that that was the game to call off, but the other games went ahead that weekend. So that's just to get the game in hand. It'd be good to get rugby back. I guess rugby's kind of played second fiddle to a lot of sports in terms of, you know, Champions Cup was very slow to come back compared to the Champions League and Premier League with a lot more touch, and it took a lot more work with the governing bodies. But yeah, Six Nations back, Sean. I guess, you know, it'd be weird seeing it in what are we now, October, but I think for rugby fans in general, it'd just be great to bit of normality watching Six Nations games.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird, like every sport scene, you know, a Six Nation games without fans, and you know, the scrum or the ruck leads players to one side of the pitch, and all of a sudden, you know, everywhere else you're looking at is empty. And I think it's gonna be weird to see it back. You know, some of the Leinster games have been a real big success. Some of the games against Munster and against the other provincial sides. So the Six Nations, it is going to be weird, but I think every sport is getting used to it. And considering it was the game, you know, the first big sporting event, Irish related, that got called off because of the crisis in Lombardy. And it is going to be interesting because, like, there is huge issues for the Six Nations to get testing right and to get the bubbles right, because there's a huge amount of cases in Ireland, in Italy. Cases are slowly starting to rise. There's different curfews being brought in. So, the huge problem with trying to bring back international sport is travel. And hopefully everything can go smoothly and safely from a COVID perspective. It's weird, that seems to be at the top of most people's worries. It's sort of typify of the world we live in, that we're hoping that no one catches a virus, rather than hoping that Ireland put in a good performance and win, which we hope as well. And France in a couple of weeks, when I think on Halloween night, when all the other games return, it's going to be interesting. But yet now you would think the Six Nations is one of those sports that kind of thrives off the fans and the atmosphere and the relentlessness of rugby. And well, it would be interesting to see how it goes without fans.
Absolutely. And one final word then on the weekend's action. I don't know if you've anything to bring up, but the Irish women's playing Ukraine in the playoff for the Euros 2021. It's a massive opportunity for the Irish women's team to get that second place, and a win or a draw secures it against Ukraine. So
yeah, it's a huge game, because they've had some really good performances under Vera Paul. They've a few players that are really excelling with their club. Katie McCabe, the Irish captain, being a prime example with Arsenal, scored in their North London derby win, scored a brilliant free kick. And the team kind of revolves around her and her ability at set pieces. And Louise Quinn, I think, is now at Florentina. So they have a little bit of experience there, and it is a huge game for them, because they, I think they beat Greece away, and they've had some really good results under Vera Paul, like I said, and they're sort of growing as a team. And what would typify that would be a place at the European Championship, and that sort of spotlight of 3 or 4 weeks when they're at the Euros, and the matches are on RTE, and young girls and boys will be watching that and getting inspired and being the next generation. So I think it is a huge game for them. And hopefully now, with the little bit of quality they have, I won't be surprised to see Katie McCabe's left foot setting up a goal, maybe for Louise Quinn at a corner or another free kick. But hopefully they can do it.
Absolutely, yeah. So a draw will be enough, but it's one of those games where if they lose, Ireland's final game is a home to Germany, which Germany have won every game. So it's almost like if they lose, it's pretty much gone for them, that second place. But hopefully, like you said, they can do it. And there's a bit of buzz around for Irish women's football, like you said, it's so important. And on that topic, Sean, we're going to next Wednesday's episode we're going to be speaking to Aon O'Riordan, the Labour TD for Dublin. It's at Dublin Bay North. But he talks to us. He's really passionate about football, exclusivity, FAI. He made the point that you don't tend to see a lot of women at Ireland soccer home games, where you see a lot more women at GAA games, at rugby games. I guess this all feeds into it. The Irish women's team was treated terribly for years, and it came out in John Delaney's book. Or it was already out, but it was emphasised more in John Delaney's book in terms of having to get changed in the toilets, only being borrowing the Irish kit, treated disgustingly really in second-class citizens, where there seems to be more of a push for equality, although we're still not there on the equality side of things. But that chat with Aon O'Riordan, Sean, we're looking forward to bringing that to the listeners on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think it offers a different insight, and maybe one from the inside of someone that's been in and around sports governing. And I think it's a whole different ballgame to stuff like club or provincial level. I think national level, when you're dealing with everything, and you're dealing with issues that are bigger than just making sure a club can survive or balance the books, if you like. But I think Aon gives us a really good insight into that, and it's a really good listen. It's a long listen, but a very enjoyable one nonetheless.
Absolutely, we look forward to bringing that to you. Tiger Woods is in the field this week at the Zozo Championships. A few other good golfers there, so they're golf's decent field there on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it's a tournament he's done really well. It's a course he's done really well at Sherwood Country Club. I think he's 134 under par in his events there, and the next best I think is Harrington at -65. So it shows you Tiger, he likes the course, and if you're looking to get a little bit of form into the Masters, every golfer will. Every golfer also will be looking to go through it safely, because DJ's missed the last few weeks. One of the top golfers in the world with coronavirus.
Adam Scott got it reached just yesterday.
Adam Scott tested positive, so it's not the kind of thing you want to miss the Masters because of coronavirus. I know Shane Lowry's come home. He doesn't, he probably wants to focus on the Masters, and these golfers will be getting tested daily now to make sure they, something doesn't come up in their system. But it's a really good field this week again, and every time Tiger's in it, it just makes it that little bit more watchable.
Absolutely. Actually, funny enough, Gabe, who we had earlier on the podcast, gave me that stat, the Harrington stat. So I knew as soon as you started what stat you were giving me there, Sean. So listen, we look forward to bringing it. It's a busy weekend of sport again, and I think it is important, given the times and the current level 5 lockdown restrictions that, you know, we will try and bring you as much sport content as possible. And I don't know about you, Sean, but I've really enjoyed kind of switching off and watching sport. And I think it is really important. And, you know, the podcast, we don't ever want to overemphasize the importance of sport, because at the end of the day, it's not that important with things that are going on. But at the same time, it's almost heightened importance just to have something to watch and something to talk about, you know what I mean? Like, just give out about, you know, Premier League's defending, you know, Tottenham's defending, what's going on there, you know, and then bringing it to like Irish women's team, you know, we've something to get behind there as well. And I think sport is very important in that regard, you know, particularly now it's probably even heightened further.
Yeah, exactly. And you think of the lift that, you know, if Dundalk are to get a result in their first couple of games, especially against Mull, that gives the not only Dundalk as a town, but as a county and the League of Ireland fans who will be cheering, well, some will be cheering Dundalk on. I'd say the Drogheda fans won't be. But, you know, like you said, if the Irish women's team can get a result out of the country, a bit of a lift, and sport does play a huge role. The Six Nations and international sports are turning more and more at the moment. So, you know, more and more reason to get behind it. And with the GAA, look, it's difficult times with lockdown and you can't meet up or go to the pub and watch these games. But hopefully with a lot of people who have RTE or with Virgin Media, I know the game on Virgin Media with Dundalk is being, you know, really hyped up and I think it could be on terrestrial TV and on Virgin Media. I'm not sure on that. But you know, it just hopefully will give the country a lift. These sport at this time, you know, plays a huge role, absolutely. And you know, the Masters in a few weeks. I mean, if Shane Lowry or Rory McIlroy is coming down the stretch with 4 or 5 holes to go, you can just imagine the anticipation in the country. And I think it's just things to look forward to. You know, I'm already looking forward to the Masters, and I think it's 2 or 3 weeks away.
Yeah, it's the most talked about thing on the podcast so far. But Virgin Media too, Sean, is the answer to that Dundalk question. So it's fantastic, and I think they get underappreciated sometimes. Virgin Media, I know it's not an Irish company running it, but they do a lot for Irish sport, and something RTE maybe could have a further look at in terms of opening their game. Although I do think they have with Declan McBennett, the new sports editor. Don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, so we'll leave it there. Listen, appreciate a bit of a long one for the preview this weekend, guys, but it's a lot to get through, to be honest with you. We may even, going forward, break it down to football and separate podcasts. If that's something you people think might work, let us know your thoughts. Stay up to date with all the sport this weekend at Tackling Sport on all social media channels. We really appreciate the follow, really appreciate any interaction. Subscribe to us on all platforms. The YouTube platform, we're getting up and running a little bit, putting a lot more videos up there. So we really appreciate the subscription there also. And if you're listening on whatever podcast platform, please follow and subscribe. And if you're on Apple, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. It helps us just bump up in the charts and just help spread the word about the show, because we're really enjoying doing it. We've got a preview Thursday, we've got a review on a Monday, and we've got our main show on a Wednesday. And we do have a few really exciting interviews. As I mentioned, Aon and Iridon's coming up on Wednesday. And we've got some other kind of exciting guests we don't want to name yet till we do the interviews and don't want to jinx too much on, but we've got a few exciting interviews coming on. So listen, appreciate the listen. That's pretty much it, Sean, for the weekend. All I have to say is goodbye from yourself.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from me, and listen, have a great weekend wherever you're watching the sport, and we'll chat to you again on Monday.
The world's made up for you, so take advantage and be happy.